Hey, good to see you all. Uh, in this tumultuous time, wow, the last couple of days have really been really disastrous, and the aftermath of retribution and so forth, the commands from on high are quite disturbing. So let's try to put our mind in a better state. Yours may be better. I need to do this. Sangye chodang soki chognam la changchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupa sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened through the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye churang soki chognam la changchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupasho. And then requesting offering mandala in order to request the teachings. O holy and perfect pure lamas, my primordial gurus, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please send down a rain of vast and profound Dharma, that would be the method side and the wisdom side, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, so let's begin with a little stabilizing meditation, again with the breathing. Relax your body. I have to remind myself, relax my mind, I don't have to multitask. I don't have to think about anything else. Just the respiration at the beginning.
Yeah.
You want to make sure to have the inspector, the mind that's watching whether you are multitasking or syncing or scattering off of the object. You want to make sure that that's functioning and alert. But that's not enough. That's just sort of like the alarm. Then you have to apply the antidote. If you might notice your mind thinking about other things rather than being mindful of the breathing, you have to bring your attention back to the breathing forcefully. And in so doing, deprive that continuity of whatever you were trying to think about, deprive it of your attention, and therefore it'll begin to diminish. If you had some success in calming the mind by being mindful of the breathing, now bring your attention to the more subtle object of your mental consciousness. Withdrawing your attention away from the five senses, maybe like turtle withdrawing its limbs, five of its limbs to its within its shell, so hunker down in the heart chakra, just the mental consciousness sense. We have to know it, first of all, by its content. Thoughts, hopes, fears, images that might be coming just due to karma or continuity or by juxtaposition with what is being said. Thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, thoughts of the present. Notice that they all are arising within this mental consciousness, which has a nature of not impeding their arrival, their emergence, not impeding their disappearance, absorption back into the consciousness. This very subtle factor that we're trying to become familiar with week by week. We would like to remember in everyday life is our developmental Buddha nature. This quality on the conventional level allows our mind to remove faulty ways of thinking, of reacting, allows us, if we practice again and again, if we meditate and familiarize ourselves with virtuous states, allows those states to become more prominent in our mind, which we might have thought would never happen. Just being aware of this, recognizing that we have this quality, we've had it even in other states when we were in the hell realms or animals or God realm, wherever, when we were humans. But we did not recognize it. We did not recognize what it meant. But now, knowing that, feeling some joy, I can change. I can confront the adverse conditions that are arising right now, right here and now in our lives because of this factor and because of the fact that we have this auspicious moment. We have a human body, human life, with our faculties intact, especially the faculty of wisdom and faith. The Buddha has appeared in the world, turned the wheel of Dharma, and those teachings are still existing in realizable form. We're not in a completely dark age. We ourselves have faith and interest to pursue this, as well as their existing in the world communities like Shantideva Center and others, benefactors of the Dharma. Whatever conditions that are appearing as adverse, we are free from being compelled to be dominated by them. Certainly, we're not born in the hell realms or the animal realm right now. Remembering what the Buddha's advice was after having mentioned the importance, the rarity and importance of the auspicious moment of a life of leisure and endowment, was that we can use it to go beyond the ordinary aspirations of people in the world, wanting to have pleasure and the sources of pleasure, power and wealth and so forth, wanting to be recognized and lionized and martyred and so forth. We can put an end to our infinite rebirths in cyclic existence by achieving nirvana, or as the Buddha advised those of sharper intellect, not to be satisfied with his lesser vehicle teaching alone, not to actualize it, but instead to reach out for the Mahayana, the great vehicle that can take us to the great destination, that vehicle that's large and copious to include all sentient beings. What a noble thought, even to develop that thought for an instant, that we could give up our ordinary interests and self-interested goals, and instead work to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, all of whom are exactly equal with us in being confused, having the appearance of inherent existence, believing in it, being caught up in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 8 worldly concerns. What would seem to ordinary people to be totally idealistic and maybe unattainable, the thought that we could work and exchange ourselves for others, work for others, exchange our attitude of cherishing. That's what exchanging means. Rather than cherishing ourself predominantly, cherishing others and ignoring the wants, the samsaric wants of the self that arise from conceiving of ourself as being inherently existent, the self-cherishing thought as an aftermath of that. But to really delve into this in order to achieve bodhicitta, in order to achieve realization of emptiness, we need to accumulate merit. One way is to listen to the teachings and put them into practice, but particularly to achieve the goal of enlightenment, samyak sambodhi, perfect enlightenment, not just the enlightenment of a hearer or a solitary realizer, their nirvana, but to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. We need to practice the bodhisattva deeds, which are basically to accumulate the 2 collections of merit and wisdom. The first 5 perfections mainly to accumulate the collection of merit, and the 6th perfection, the perfection of wisdom, mainly to accumulate the collection of wisdom, of gnosis. We know little of that intuitively, and so we need to hear the teachings again and again, one of which is Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, commenting on the Buddha's Prajna Paramita Sutras, Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, expounded on by Bhavaviveka and Buddhapalita, especially the Prasangika founder, Buddhapalita, and following in his footsteps, Chandrakirti's masterful Majjhimaka Vatara, which we are studying indirectly through Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on it and its auto-commentary, Lama Tsongkhapa's Gompa Rapso, is a framework of our class. I think I'm going to participate today with a fresh mind, listening, trying to hear the essence of the Dharma. When I understand something, contemplating it, and placing my mind in concentration on it occasionally, meditating to develop the 3 kinds of wisdom of hearing, contemplation, and meditation. I'm going to participate in order to achieve this incredible goal of enlightenment for the sake of all mother sentient beings. This should be my goal day after day when I wake up in the morning every day, but particularly when we start a task like listening to the teaching, to try to set up that motivation at the beginning, that inertia, that even if our mind becomes distracted during the class, due to the force of this motivation, bodhicitta motivation, will accumulate immense amount of merit. I'm going to participate in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay. Thank you. Stephen is here. Stephen, I hope you're okay. Good to see everyone. Hi, Suvash. Suvash is here. So where is Mikhail? Mikhail's okay? Anyone know? Nadine, do you know where Mikhail is?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. No idea.
Hope he's okay. Yeah, very trying time here in the United States. Those of you in Europe or in Australia may not be aware so much. There was an assassination of an individual the other day who was a sort of a spokesman for the MAGA movement, which has caused incredible negative karma. The young man who perpetrated the act has already been apprehended. So there's a lot to think about and worry about, because people talking about retribution and so forth. So I wanted to mention a few things before we begin. Yeah, so you may not see the the connection at first. So Milarepa Sean kindly came out a couple of weeks ago and helped me with my throne here. I have a nice solid throne, and my car and the sign on my fence post that he'd so kindly made, but particularly my car. So I was thinking I had to, now that the door is fixed on my car, I have to make the headlights. I have to, there's there's a plastic screen on the headlights that sometimes gets frosted due to the sunlight. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
So I checked and I found a method by using toothpaste, hopefully baking soda toothpaste and baking soda, and applying it and smearing it on again and again, circular motion, and making them very crystal clear. And I was so proud. I've even been thinking of it when I was going to sleep. Oh, my headlights now are so clear, sort of motivated by, trying to repay Sean's kindness. I thought, this is completely samsaric motivation, realizing that, trying to think in the same way, may I be able to eliminate the cataract of ignorance in the minds of sentient beings, just as I'm cleaning off this grime on my headlights. So there are ways that you can, and we've talked about it so many times, and hopefully you all try to apply it in some way. Whatever you do to try to utilize it into the path, even if it's washing the dishes or cleaning the floor or cleaning your headlight lamps or whatever. At a time like this, to transform these adverse conditions into the path. So when you hear about people being cruel and so forth, really you have to step back from that, because our ordinary mind and dominated by the appearance of this lifetime is going to be involved with afflictions and our self-interest and our superficial idea of compassion for others. We have to step back and try to develop real compassion for those who are acting unwisely. And those are what we think about in theory when we talk about bodhicitta, to try to be able to become enlightened eventually, to lead sentient beings gradually out of the hell realms, out of the animal realms and so forth, out of bad states as humans. Sometimes it may take many, 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 many lifetimes. So we have to have a long goal, but to see them all as worthy of our compassion. So I just wanted to remind all of us about that that's something we can be actively doing. Another thing is the importance of understanding the teachings. This individual who was assassinated, what was his name?
Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk. Charles Kirk, Charlie Kirk. A very polarizing individual, but lionized very much by the followers, especially young people. And he was assassinated at an event that he was performing at a small college in Utah, where people have the chance to ask him questions to try to prove him wrong or something like that. And he would debate with them. People were very excited because he was so confident and charismatic. And there was one particular episode that I think Doris sent me that was up on YouTube of a young girl who was asking him questions about how to become a better person or something like this. And he asked her what religion she was, and she said she was a Buddhist. And she was obviously, like maybe just a college student, not older, not postgraduate, I think probably undergraduate student. And he said, "What's your goal as a Buddhist?" He was being very commanding. And she said, "I think to become a better person." And he said, "No, I know about Buddhism." Later he said, "I know a lot about Buddhism. And the goal of Buddhism is nirvana, and which is just just your own interest and degradation of the world and so forth and so on." And she had no way to answer him. She was just a novice in understanding Buddhism. And so it's incumbent upon us, say in the tradition of the great beings of the past, the disciple of Nagarjuna Aryadeva, who was sent sometime to debate with non-Buddhists. Many, many stories of at different times when non-Buddhists were defeating Buddhists in such a way that it would defeat the minds of people who were aspiring Buddhists, hearing these debates by someone who was very charismatic or very authoritative, until someone who was well-versed in Buddhism would debate with them and be able to confront them with their own contradictions and so forth and so on. So to understand the teachings now, if you encounter people now, not to be aggressive, not to be try to demolish the other person, but to be able to refute wrong understandings through your correct understanding of Buddhism. Certainly, when the girl had said, when he had asked her, "What's the goal of Buddhism?" she said she wanted to become a better person. I think that's very much the goal of Buddhism. She was completely right. To become a better person through achieving the lesser goal of nirvana, but to go beyond that to achieve the goal of enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So I just wanted to share that with you, a couple of stories. Anyone have any Any comments before we begin? Any problems that you're experiencing with the current situations?
I'm definitely facing issues with my own family because they're supporters of all this. And
your parents and so forth, yeah.
so, yeah, it's forced me into a position where I have to learn Christianity better than they know Christianity to try to speak to them through that. But even that's not, they're not even,
Right.
It seems pointless.
Right now. So one has to have a very long view and to keep a close relation with them, a loving relation with them, so that your words will have some impact, even though it may be on a subliminal level and influence them, maybe later this life or maybe in future lives when you encounter them again. So we have to have a very long view that way. Okay, enough of that. Okay, so getting back to our text, we're going to begin today on Thupten Jinpa's text, page 312, and on the FPMT version, the translation of page 174. This is where we were beginning. This is where we ended last time, and I wanted to review the paragraph just before this. So we're going to begin. I said we would begin here, right? In critiquing this passage of Bhava Viveka, Chandrakirti writes. This is on that page in Jimpa's translation. So he's got a quotation from the Bhasham where Chandrakirti writes this. So right before this, we had talked about this paragraph before. Bhava Viveka, who you remember is the, essentially you could say the founder of the Svatantrika system, right? So Madhyamaka, but not Prasangika. Bhava Viveka responds to Chittamatra's positing of its own standpoint. This is the paragraph just before what I read. As outlined in the lines, since there is no visual cognition in sleep, quoting verse 650, by demonstrating how the opponent's analogy remains unestablished. He writes, Bhava Viveka writes, how in a dream state there do exist forms belonging to the class of mental objects. Remember, we were talking about this before. Usually, forms, we say visual forms, but there are also forms that can be perceived by the mental consciousness. And one that I mentioned in particular was like non-revelatory forms. When you take a vow or make a promise, that creates some kind of form that can't be seen by the ordinary eye organ, but can be perceived by the mental consciousness, but it is still categorized as a form. What makes it a form? Because it's said to act like a dam acts, the form of a dam, like earth and metal or whatever, concrete, can stop the flow of water. Creating a vow, a promise like that has a similar kind of quality of preventing the occurrence of something you're vowing not to do. If you vow not to kill or steal and so forth. So it's called non-revelatory form. So that was, he said, he writes how in a dream state there do exist forms belonging to the class of mental objects, forms that are perceivable by mental consciousness. Hence, no instance of consciousness exists that have no object. And his note there, 571, is just showing the place in Bhava Viveka's text where you can find that quote. So in critiquing this passage of Bhava Viveka, so why would Chandrakirti want to critique Bhava Viveka? well, we'll see. Chandrakirti says, this too is incorrect. Well, he's not saying that that he disagrees that there are forms that are perceivable by mental consciousness. That's not what he's critiquing. He's critiquing the fact that Bhava Viveka is positing these as being inherently existent. Remember, one of the hallmarks from the Prasangika point of view of the Svatantrika is that the Svatantrika does say that phenomena do not truly exist, but they still inherently exist. So this is going to be his line of attack. So Chandrakirti says, this too is incorrect, criticizing Bhava Viveka, because the existence of all three factors remain utterly impossible in the dream state. What three factors is he talking about here? Let me see, anyone's eyes are lighting up. No one. Don, what three factors is he talking about?
I think the object, the eye faculty, the eye consciousness, and the main mind.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, close enough. If you accept these three factors in the dream state for the sake of refuting the opponent's standpoint, the dream analogy would in that case become meaningless. If the dream has content that is not fictitious, so what does that mean? Not fictitious means not false. What's the opposite of falsities and fictitious? That which is true, right? Not truly existent, but that which is true. What is true? Only emptiness from the Prasangika point of view, right? So if the dream state has content that is not fictitious, in other words, that is true, then it cannot illustrate the actual referent, the things have the character of being false. Following a little bit? Richard, what do you think? Okay.
It's a little hard to unpack, but it makes sense.
Yeah. So,
I think he's basically saying, correct me if I'm wrong here, that if something is in a dream, all of it's fictitious, and if you say that something is somehow or another established in the dream as existing, then you're kind of messing with the analogy, and you're making the analogy breaks down.
right. So Bhava Viveka's position is saying that there are mental objects, contradicting the Chittamatra, that these mental objects do exist, because Chittamatra is saying how you can have consciousness of something even without an external object, without an object. And Bhava Viveka is using the example of the dream objects as being perceivable, of forms that are perceivable by mental consciousness, but he's saying that they're inherently existent. Okay, so the meaning of that is explained in the next paragraph, where he says, the meaning of the above statement is this. So that was just a quotation from Chandrakirti. Now Lama Tsongkhapa is explaining what Chandrakirti meant there. The intrinsic existence, the inherent existence of objects, sense organs, and consciousnesses is totally impossible, even in a dream state. There's never any kind of state where inherent existence is established, as it exists. Inherent existence does does not exist. True existence does not exist, right? They are illusions. They seem to exist, but when analyzed, one sees that they don't exist the way that they appear. They naturally appear that way to our consciousnesses, to the imprints in our minds, the obstructions to omniscience among them. The intrinsic existence of objects, sense organs, and consciousnesses is totally impossible, even in a dream state. When you say even, meaning it's, we know that in the waking state, when we talk about things appear to be inherently existent, but they are not. There's no inherent existence, no intrinsic existence, but the same thing holds in the dream. It is therefore illogical to say that in a dream state, there exists a mental object form, a form which is cognizable by mental consciousness alone, like say the dream elephants or whatever. He's not saying that just that particular kind of mental object, that is an entity distinct from consciousness. It is illogical to say that in a dream state there exists a mental object form that is an entity distinct from consciousness, meaning one which is inherently existent. This is how one should correctly respond to the Chittamatra position. We talked a little bit about that last time, right? Does that make sense? That's essentially the gist of what Lama Tsongkhapa is explaining about Chandrakirti's comment. Paul, making sense? Yeah, okay, good. That's a nice thumb. Then the text continues in Jimpa's translation. Now, the existence of such a form is something that one must also accept. It sounded like he just said that you can't accept that form, but Lama Tsongkhapa is saying you can't accept an inherently existent mental form. But the existence of such a mental form is something that one must also accept. There is no contradiction in maintaining that such form exists in the dream state. So what becomes clear from the above exchange is that Bhava Viveka accepts such a form in a dream state to possess an intrinsic existence, while Chandrakirti's passage argues against such existence. Not the existence of the form, but the existence of an inherently existent form. If the intrinsic existence of a mental object form were to be accepted, because doing so could help refute the Chittamatra's dream analogy, that's what Bhava Viveka is trying to do. If you accept it because it could help to refute Chittamatra's dream analogy that purports to demonstrate consciousness without external reality, this would then make the Madhyamaka's own use of the dream analogy to illustrate the absence of true existence of things meaningless. Whoa. David, how are you doing? You following? Yeah. Okay, I see some people looking at their books and the thinking mudra. Ron has the thinking mudra on. Let's see what is saying here. So at this point, in July 16th, 2003, Geshe Zopa, when he was teaching this during the summer course, said the following, just at this context. He said, at that time, that means, well, I'm not sure what, in the dream state, right? At that time, Prasangika, at that time oneself, the Prasangika itself, also accepts that in the dream time, the dream state, when elephants and so forth appear, I consciousnesses do not exist. I consciousness does not exist, but there is a Dharma entrance form Dharma entrance form. That is what is being talked about. Remember, this is the same thing as talking about when you say an object for mental consciousness, a form for mental consciousness. So when we talk about mental consciousness, when we talk about the 12 entrances or the 18 dhatus, we talk about the Dharma dhatu, right? The Dharma dhatu refers to the objects of mental consciousness alone that other consciousnesses cannot perceive. Mainly one, because we talk Dharma dhatu sometimes means emptiness. So emptiness is something that the other senses or senses of ordinary sentient beings can't perceive, but is an object of mental consciousness. That's why one of the reasons why the word Dharma dhatu refers to not only the objects of mental consciousness, but particularly about emptiness. So he says, this is what's being talked about, the Dharma entrance form, the form for the mental consciousness. Since it is not contradictory for that to exist also in a dream, due to the clear acceptance by bhava viveka that form exists by its own characteristic, if that is taken as a reason for it to not exist and so forth, this is just quoting Chandrakirti's quotation. Geshe Sopa was quoting Chandrakirti's quotation that we just talked about. So he said, according to our system, that means the Prasangika, form exists in the dream state. It does exist. There is no contradiction because it exists conventionally, relatively, or in other words, falsely, samvritti. It exists for a concealing mind. But true inherent existence is rejected by the Prasangika. Bhava Viveka accepted that form, that mental form, as inherently existent. So therefore, the reason for all the above, that kind of inherently existent form, so Geshe said, this portion is hard. So, when we just read the Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary or Jinpa's translation of it, Jinpa sometimes has notes that indicate that this passage is sometimes difficult for people to understand and so forth. Here he doesn't mention that much, but Geshe Sopa said, this portion is hard. To try to discern what Chandrakirti was saying about Bhava Viveka, right? But it's clear. But back and forth, who is saying what? This is hard to understand. But Bhava Viveka is saying, what does what is Bhava Viveka saying? What does the commentary say? What is this? So you have to now be very, very clear, so clear. Bhava Viveka and Prasangika are similar, that in the dream time, the dream state, the elephant appearing is form. They're similar that way, right? That it's a form for mental consciousness. It's a dharma dhatu. Both say it is form, but Bhava Viveka's position is of inherent existence. The Svatantrikas believe in Rangyupa. Rangyupa means Svatantraka, right? Rangyu means Svatantra. Means independently existent phenomena, independently existing phenomena. That means it doesn't depend, some things that are inherently existent, they don't depend on anything else, which is contradictory to the Prasangika understanding of the lack of true existence. They said that it includes the lack of inherent existence. He accepts independent existence, that is to say, Bhava Viveka, which means that there is an inherently existent consciousness, there is an inherently existent object, there is an inherently existent organ. That part is here rejected. That's what Lama Tsongkhapa, that's what Chandrakirti was rejecting, and Lama Tsongkhapa is explaining. It does not reject, Chandrakirti is not rejecting consciousness being there, the organ being there. They are there conventionally, right? They conventionally exist. They are there. They do exist, but not inherently. There is some kind of subtle form, Dharma entrance form, Dharma dhatu, or let's say in this case, when you say Dharma entrance form, that would be Dharma, what, Paul? Not Dharma dhatu,
Dharmayatana.
Dharma ayatana, or Dharma ayutana. It depends how you break it, put it all together. There's some kind of subtle form, Dharma entrance form, that Prasangika accepts, but it is not real as Bhava Viveka said it was. Okay? So then Geshe-la talked about the next part of the sentence that began with chitte. So if Bhava Viveka's side is saying the Yogacara system, forms included in external entrances are not other objects other than consciousness. That's what the Chittamatra is saying, right? That they don't accept them as being other than consciousness. They are mind only, Chittamatra. They do not accept outer, external, physical as different objects than consciousness. So they try to use dream as an example. But since that can be excluded by this reasoning, Bhava Viveka thinks whatever answer, that can be cleared away. Not exactly clear what Geshe-la was saying here. So then he said, in order to clear away that Yogacara view, if you accept that there is still some kind of inherently existent form in the dream, but not outside form, but an internal kind of form still exists inherently, in trying to refute Bhava Viveka, if you say that, in trying to refute Chittamatra, sorry, if you say that there's still an inherently existent form there, then it is useless to posit the example of a dream to establish non-true existence by the Madhyamaka. So this is what Geshe-la was saying. This section is hard, so you'll have to think about this a bit. Why, the Prasangika uses the analogy of the dream to prove the non-inherent existence, or to make an analogy of the non-true existence of phenomena. But if you accept inherently existent form, then the Madhyamika says, in order to prove anything is not truly existent, it is useless to posit the example of a dream, often setting the example of a dream. So when we talk about the post-meditation, after a direct realization of emptiness, when you arise from that, we talk about that kind of meditation on emptiness, where you remember phenomena are appearing to be truly existent, appearing to be inherently existent, but they are not. What is that state called? Do you remember, Suvash?
That's what happens in post-meditation, but I don't know what you're referring to.
Well, sometimes we call it the illusion-like meditation on emptiness, mirage-like meditation on emptiness, or we would say that it is like a dream. It is like the phenomena are like a dream, in that they appear to exist, but they are not really there. For instance, in the dream, the herd of elephants appears to exist, or whatever happened in the dream, the beautiful woman or man, or the terrible situation in the dream, when you wake up from the dream and you say, oh, it was just a dream. In the same way, when you wake up from the meditative equipoise on emptiness and phenomena appear, you can make the similar kind of analogy that they are seeming to appear, but they are actually empty of inherent existence. Making sense? Okay, yeah, a little bit nod from someone. Okay, so Geshe-la continued. I'm just reading this because although it's saying more or less the same thing that's said here, it's a little bit of flavor because, as Geshe-la said, this is a difficult section, even though it's treated very quickly here in Lama Tsongkhapa's text. It's almost like, you should understand it, or just swallow it. You have to understand what's being said. So Geshe-la said, Madhyamika always holds that things are not truly existent. Is that true, Madhyamika? Yeah, Madhyamika, meaning the Svatantrika and Prasankika, both hold that phenomena are not truly existent. But the Svatantrika says that still they're inherently existent, right? Madhyamika always holds that things are not truly existent, and Prasankika holds that they're not inherently existent. Rejection of those and showing shunyata and showing the shunyata, we ordinarily use the dream or reflection in a mirror. We use the example of the moon and water or an echo. Those things are the best examples in the Madhyamika, to show that phenomena are not truly existent, and from the Prasankika point of view, to show that they're not inherently existent. What is the example of the moon and the water? Moon and water mean? Does anyone know that example? John, are you still online?
Was one of the early verses in the Madhyamika the reflection or beings are like reflections of the moon in rippling water, seeing them as fleeting and devoid of intrinsic existence.
Right. Well, so one of the examples is that, say, for instance, there's the moon up in the sky, the actual moon, the entity of the moon, but in a clear pond, there can be the reflection of the moon, and it looks, if you look at it, say if a deer comes up to the pond and looks at it, it looks like that's the moon, but it is actually empty of being the moon, right? In the sense, just in the analogy that the actual moon is up in the sky, but this is this reflection in a clear pond. We call it a water moon or something like that. The reflection of the moon in the water is actually devoid of that. So these are the different examples that are used in showing shunyata. Those things are the best examples in the Madhyamika. So therefore, these will be meaningless. These examples will be meaningless if it's still inherently existent. That means the Prasankika is pushing, is using logic to try to push the Svatantrika into admitting this. If there is inherent existence, then there is true existence. If there is true existence, then if you accept that, even in a dream, then why is the dream a special example? Why is it put there? Okay, I just wanted to share that with you, okay? Making sense so far? A little bit? To think about it. Okay, so let's continue. Jim's translation says, for, according to Bhava Viveka, he's got in brackets, dream would then have content that is not fictitious and would itself exist by virtue of its intrinsic characteristic. What does that say? For according to Bhava Viveka, dream would have content that is not false because it's inherently existent. Like say this mental object form, which is a mental object, would be inherently existent and would itself exist by virtue of its intrinsic characteristic, would inherently exist. This would then make it impossible to use the analogy of a dream to help establish the falsehood of the things that are the actual reference of such an analogy. This would then make it impossible to use the analogy of a dream. This is what we want to be able to do, to help establish the falsehood of the things that are the actual reference of such an analogy. So if you're claiming that they're inherently existent, Prasakika is saying you can't use that as an analogy to show that they're false. Then the Lama Tsong Khapa's commentary says, for as long as one does not reject intrinsic existence, as long as you don't reject inherent existence, it is impossible to relate the reason as well as the predicate to be proven to the example cited. Okay, so he has a note there, 573. So in that note, Chimpa says, Tsongkhapa is here alluding to an important condition of a correct proof, according to the classical Indian system of logic. Remember when we talk about correct proofs, you have a subject, a predicate, a reason, and you have an example. You have to be able to have an example. According to the Indian system of logic, meaning Dharmakirti, not just Indian system in general, but the system of Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Dharmakirti, according to which a valid example in a proof must be something that is compatible with both the reason, which in Sanskrit is the hetu. Usually we say, what do we say in Tibetan? What is hetu?
Gu.
What is it?
Gen or gu. Wait.
Gyunsen, right?
Gyugen, yeah.
Gyunsen.
Gyunzen.
Gyunsen. Right, Paul? Or you agree? Usually.
Yeah, I think so. That sounds right. Yeah.
Or hetu. Mm-hmm.
Hetu can just mean cause, gyu in general, but when you're talking about hetu used in a logical statement, you're talking about it as the reason, the tensik. So Khapa is alluding here to an important condition of a correct proof, according to classical Indian system of logic, according to which a valid example in a proof must be something that is compatible with both the reason, the hetu, the proof, and the proof, and the predicate to be proven, or the probandum. Okay, what is the probandum generally? Let's say if we say that form is not inherently existent because it's a dependent arising, what's the probandum in that? What does probandum mean? Does anyone know? Do you remember, Stephen? Stephen, are you still there? Maybe he's offline. Okay.
Usually just means that which is to be proven or something like that.
Right. So what is to be proven if you said form is not inherently existent because it's a dependent arising?
The non-inherent existence.
Its lack of inherent existence, right?
Yeah.
Does it include the subject?
Yeah. Oh, yes. It would.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not inherently existent. That is what is to be proven, right? That's a probandum. Okay. So The example in a proof must be something that is compatible with both the reason, that's the third element, and the probandum, which is the first two elements, right? This system of proof statement is based on a structure of a proposition that has three members. The subject, the chuchen or dharmin, that's the first thing, like sound or phenomena. The probandum, in that case, he's taking probandum to being just the second, just the,
predicate. Yeah.
just the predicate, and the reason. Take the well-known proposition from Shantarakshita's Ornament of the Middle Way, for example. So now he's quoting Shantarakshita's, what is it? Umagen, I guess, Ornament of the Middle Way. So self and so forth, postulated by the philosophers, that's the subject, are devoid of true existence. That's the predicate. I think he's using probandum incorrectly here. I'm not sure. I think it should be predicate rather than probandum. Probandum usually includes the subject and the predicate, in my understanding. I may be wrong.
No, I think you're right, Venerable George. It's usually the thesis.
The thesis, yeah. Probandum. Self and so forth, postulated by the philosophers as the subject, as the first element, are devoid of true existence. That's the predicate. Because, now the reason, because they have no reality as one or many. When we talked about the various reasonings that the Svatantrika uses, because Shantarakshita was, what school was he a member of, Shantarakshita?
Svatantrika Madhyamaka, Svatantrika
Yogacara.
Yogacara
Svatantrika
Madhyamaka.
Madhyamaka, yeah.
Anyway, Svatantrika, right? So he's saying, because they have no reality as one or many, or one or multiple here. So when we talked about the various reasonings to establish non-true existence, we talked about, one and many, the lack of being one or many, or one or multiple as one of those examples. Just like and then the example, just like the reflection of a face in a mirror, for example. You could say that's the fourth element. This is reading that note from Thupten Jinpa's. You will have it in your text. In short, Tsongkhapa is saying that as long as one fails to reject intrinsic existence, inherent existence, some notion of true existence will always remain. This is the real, simply put, but crucial understanding. The difference between Prasangika and Svatantrika, several other differences, but the main reason is that Svatantrika is saying that things can be empty of true existence, but still have some inherent existence. Prasangika position is that if there's any inherent existence at all, if there's anything findable there, that constitutes true existence. So there's a big difference there. In short, Tsongkhapa is saying that as long as one fails to reject intrinsic existence, some notion of true existence will always remain. This means that one will never find a valid example that can help establish that given subject is devoid of true existence. Making a little sense? Not that hard, actually, but. Louise, is your COVID mind foggy or?
I have to review this later.
Okay. So at this point, Geshe said, he said, now here the key word is, as long as inherent existence is not rejected, until inherent existence is refuted, whatever to prove whatever you use to prove non-true existence, the Svatantrika is trying to prove that things are not truly existent, but if they haven't refuted inherent existence, any reason or example you use can't be followed. Okay. So yeah, John.
I'm sorry, Venerable George, if this is like going to take too long, but I was wondering if you could just quickly refresh our memories of what is it that the Svatantrikas say has inherent existence even without true existence.
Right. They're saying that conventional phenomena, say for instance, some of us are more familiar with the Prasangika position. We would say that Prasangika would say that conventional phenomena, like my mug, exists as a mere imputation on its basis of designation, that you can't find the mug anywhere. It's just a name, like when in the Vajrakutta Sutra, when we say that Bodhisattva is just a name, when we say that phenomena are just a name, or phenomena are just names and concepts, they're just merely imputed by name or concept. They can't find anything there. But Svatantrika says, if you look within the basis of designation, you can find something that represents the object. That's something that is there inherently from its own side. And so Svatantrika would say that you could find something, let's say if you talk about the person, even though the person is imputed on the 5 aggregates, one of which is the consciousness aggregate, even though that includes 6 consciousnesses, basically it's just the mental consciousness that you can eventually find that there's something there existing from its own side that's inherently existent. Prasangika would say, no, that's not the case. So just continuing the last part of that paragraph, in view of all these, compared to what Bhava Viveka has suggested, the response we have presented above, that everything perceived in a dream lacks intrinsic existence, is far more excellent. Yeah. So again, at this point, Geshe Sopa said, and I'm reading here because this is one of those sections where to be able to use the the oral tradition of the great scholars who studied Gompa Rapsel, Madhyamaka Uttara and Gompa Rapsel and so forth, gives some flavor. Just to mention, for Geshe to say this is a hard section. He said, therefore, all these Prasangika's own system, in the dream time and so forth, whatever appears, whatever exists in the dream, all of them are not inherently existent. They do not inherently exist. So that's Prasangika position. Whereas for the Svatantrika, they do inherently exist. To answer in that way is the best. That's the best thing, right? What did Jimpa say is most excellent. Otherwise, to say some things are inherently existent, some are true, some are not true, that is not able to reject. The Madhyamika position cannot be established. So therefore, this way, answering Che Lekpa one is in the text that is most excellent, Che Lekpa. Che, like the shorter form of Chempo, when you just say Che Lekpa. So that means this is most excellent. That's what Chimpa is translating. Anything based on non-inherent existence, that is the main key used that way. Whatever answer is based on that. Okay. So Louise is reminding us to take a break. Should we take a little break? Your mind fog? Okay. Okay, let's take a little short break. I'm going to go off camera, but I'm going to listen in case to begin. Okay, thank you. We had a little break. Questions about the meaning of the word dharma, that which it comes from the root. What would you say, dur? John, you wouldn't say dri, even though the Tibetan.
It's I bet Paul has something cool to add to this, but it's actually one of these because all these verbal roots are, as our Sanskrit acharya in back in school would tell us, these are grammatical fictions. So they are derived from the language itself. There is no actual word, but in the same way, words that end with that vowel simply don't exist in the language, and therefore it's only speculated how it's supposed to be pronounced. That ends up sounding different in different areas of India, regionally specific accents. So I've heard it pronounced dru and dri. It kind of
Right.
goes like that.
So in the Tibetan alphabet, when we say a, e, u, it looks like they transliterated as ri.
Right,
So
right.
that would be one, but sometimes you would say it's just what we say, something like that.
Yeah, but I think ri is a that's works. It certainly works. Yeah, but it's supposed to be, obviously is different than the I vowel, which is e. Yeah.
Right. So Jeremy had asked during the break just about the meaning of the word dharma. So we're just going into the root of the word dharma is this word dr or dri, which means to uphold. So the worldly dharmas are that which we think uphold us from suffering erroneously, because they're actually all of the nature of suffering. Whereas the sad dharma, the holy dharma, or the true dharma, is that which actually upholds us from suffering, the Buddha dharma. Okay. So we're going to continue now with Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary. So the next section, Jimpa has in brackets the word question. So according to our own system, are those forms that are perceived vividly in dreams accepted as mental object forms or not? Come on, fess up. So Khapa is just trying to clarify this. So he's talking about the prasangika, right? According to our own system, are those forms that are perceived vividly in dreams accepted as mental objects or not? At this point, Geshe Zopa had made some comment. Let's see if this was relevant here. He said, certain kinds of forms, sounds, visible objects, elephants, etc., these physical appearances of dreams clearly appear. So you can have in certain dreams, not just in maybe the ordinary dreams, but sometimes dreams are very vivid, and there's a clear appearance in that, as though you were actually seeing something with your eyes. I remember Alan Wallace talked about this kind of example in his books on concentration and so forth. So not all dreams have this vivid kind of appearance, but in some of them, even sounds seem to be vividly appearing in the sense of, not appearing in the sense of eye, but as though cognizable. So the question is, does the Madhyamika's own system accept form that is a Dharma entrance or not? So the answer is coming, it says. Okay, so the reply is, Lama Tsongkhapa's reply is, since there is no sensory consciousness in a dream state, what appear as five sense objects are in fact being perceived only by mental consciousness. So you can have the sense of tactility in the dream also in a vivid dream. You can have the sense of smell and taste and so forth in a vivid dream. And these are in fact being perceived only by the mental consciousness. So although one cannot posit the presence of the five sense objects such as visible form and so forth, that would mean the others, sounds and smells and so forth. Although you can't posit the presence of the five sense objects, the objects of dreams are mental object forms. Remember, that is the that is either the Dharma Ayutthana or the Dharma Dhatu, depending on which one you're going to talk about. Here it just says mental objects forms, forms that are only perceivable by mental consciousness. This is analogous to recognizing the vivid perceptions of skeletons in mental consciousness during meditative states as being mental object forms. What is that talking about? Does anyone know? Oh, yeah, Louise.
The ugliness of the body, disattachment to the body.
So certain kind of meditative practices, not just of bodhisattvas, also the hearers, solitary realizers, they would imagine emanating out skeletons, first one skeleton, and that skeleton multiplying to two, and that multiplying to four, and so forth, filling the whole universe to remain in a, let's say, taking as your object of mindfulness, vividly appearing in that meditative state to remind you of impermanence and death. This is one of the kind of practices. So this is analogous to recognizing the vivid perceptions of skeletons in mental consciousness during meditative states, as being mental objects formed. So that's usually accepted in the different systems. Out of five types of mental objects, dream objects belong to the category of imputed forms. He says imputed forms. I don't think that's the correct translation. So he has there note 574. Let me just read the last sentence there. Though through this analysis, we should understand the status of many other similar facts. So first of all, his note 574 says, Tsongkhapa is here thinking of the five types of mental object forms mentioned in a Sangha's compendium of Abhidharma. Remember the Abhidharma Samuchaya. And we've talked about different translations of that. Someone, I think it might have been Stephen, had mentioned there was one by a Kagyu scholar, but the one that often I'd used in the past before that translation came out by was one that was translated from, I think, from Lamott's French translation by one nun. Anyway, here in his note, Jimpa translates forms emerging from a process of deconstruction, which I think is not right. Forms of open space, forms of vows derived through a rite. That was what we were talking about, non-revelatory forms, forms that are imagined or imputed, and forms arising from meditative experience. So that would be the one about the skeletons. So at this point, Geshe Zopa said, just mental, itsam, merely the sixth mental perspective. For example, the Prasangika says yogis, when meditating on impurity, which is what Louise was implying also when I asked her, Sashi Tamche Kengru Ki Kyapa. What does that mean? Sashi Tamche Kengru Ki Kyapa. Is your Tibetan good enough, Suvash? You know what that means?
Birth
Well,
and death also.
No, Sashi Tamche, so all the ground, all the area. Kengru is skeleton. Kikyapa is pervaded by skeletons. So all of the ground pervaded by skeletons. Keng is marrow in the bone. Ru means the bone. So you just meditate on something small here. I think Geshe was pointing, I think they usually meditate here, some small piece of bone around the place where your supposedly third eye is. You imagine emanating from that, and from here spread. Finally, you would spread one skeleton, and then that would emanate two more skeletons, all of them then emanating four skeletons and so forth, until the whole ground around you is filled with skeletons. So I said all of space before. I think maybe in this meditative experience, usually to talk about the ground. So you're completely surrounded, as though all the people around you. So if you're going on the bus to work, or sitting in Starbucks or something, everyone you see, you would very easily imagine as being a skeleton, and remind yourself of their inevitable death, just as Charlie Kirk experienced on 9/11? I think it was on 9/11, wasn't it? You just meditate on something small here, and then from there spread. Finally, this meditation, you see everything as though pervaded by skeletons. All these things appear to mental consciousness, not to sense consciousnesses. That is explained as Dharma entrance form. Okay, form of the mental consciousness. This is similar to a dream. So remember, we're giving this list of 5 different kinds of mental object forms. Forms that are only perceivable by mental consciousness, one of which is like the vivid appearance in dreams, one of which is the experience of a meditator meditating on skeletons and so forth. So therefore, Dharma entrance form. Prasangika says this is a subtle form. The question arises, are they forms or not? Prasangika will say they are forms, but there are both gross and subtle forms. Dharma entrance form is subtle form. Okay, you might ask in the same way, those of you who practice Tantra, like say the illusory body and so forth, is that subtle form? Anyway, we won't go into that. It's something you to think about. The lower schools will say that they are not form, that they are just mere imputation. Sometimes they say like that. But that is also the name. So there are 5 types of form. So in Tibetan, what did we have here? So Geshe started saying namta kitsuk. Actually, I think he meant kuntakit, kuntakpa, tuntakpe suk. So anyway, from the list in Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness on page 232. Doris, could you put up on it's already there if you take a look in the notes right now, there is a PDF. There it is, from Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness. This is from starting on page 232 in this section where he talks about all of the various things that are considered to be phenomena. So forms for the mental consciousness. Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness says the final category of forms. So usually you talked about visual form and auditory form, olfactory form, and so forth, tactile form, and then mental form, forms for mental consciousness. The final category of form is comprised of forms for the mental consciousness, which are undemonstrable and non-obstructive. Non-demonstrable, undemonstrable. So that means when we talk about non-revelatory, that they cannot be revealed, or they're not undemonstrable. They are defined as form aggregates, which are objects only of the mental consciousness, and thus are classed not as form sources, rupa ayatana or rupayatana, but as phenomena sources, dharma ayatana. The first one is form arising from aggregation, according to Jeffrey's translation. So I think that's what Jimpa is translating as what here in his note, forms emerging from a process of deconstruction. I think that's what he's. Paul or John, do you have any idea why he came up with that?
Maybe it's a misreading of the Tibetan, since do can mean to gather or collect. I don't know.
Right. So dua le gyurpa. So dupa means to, yeah, Jeffrey translates as form arising from aggregation, whereas Jimpa translated it as what? What did I just say here? Forms emerging from a process of deconstruction. So I'm not sure. I think a better translation from my point of view is Jeffrey's translation, form arising from aggregation. For example, a single particle. Maybe that's what Jimpa is thinking about, that it is, if you talk about a single particle, it's not something that's an object of eye consciousness, is it? According to the Abhidharma. It's something that is perceivable only by mental consciousness. Maybe that's why he's talking about deconstruction. So you deconstruct to just one. Anyway, second one, space form, the appearance of clear space only to a mental consciousness. Third one, form arising from promises, or in other words, a vow or absence of a vow. So how does that work? So remember we talked about before, if you make a promise or a vow very strongly, that creates a non-revelatory form that can help you keep that vow. It's a form in the sense that it can help to keep the flow of that from thing that you're vowing to avoid, can keep that from happening. And also a non-vow. Okay, so imaginary form, such as horses, elephants, or a house in a dream, or a non-actual meditative object, such as an area filled with corpses. So he takes that as one. And then form for one with meditative powers, earth, water appearing to one in an isolated meditative stabilization on earth or water. So he says the shape of a single particle is necessarily round, but its colors are various as described above for the four elements. Since single particles appear only to the mental consciousness, all shapes and colors are not included in the category of visible forms seen by an eye consciousness. Ah, interesting. Okay. Second one, space forms. Space appears to both an eye consciousness and a mental consciousness, and thus the bluish space appears to an eye consciousness. The bluish space that appears to an eye consciousness is a visible form, whereas the space that appears to a mental consciousness is a form for mental consciousness. So is this talking about the, when we talk about namka, akasha, that means space, right? We talk about uncompounded space, and what's the other kind of space called? Anyone remember? Paul, do you know?
Drawing a blank.
Intermediate space, right? Barnangi, namka. So that means the space in front that we, we see through right now. I'm not sure whether this is referring to that or not. Both are impermanent. That is, space that appears to an eye consciousness. That would be, let's say, maybe that's the Barnangi Namka, the intermediate space. We're not talking about the space which is uncompounded, which is only a mental object. But this kind of space can also be a visible space because it's impermanent, whereas uncaused space, uncompounded space, which is a non-affirming negative of obstructive contact, right? What is space? The lack of obstructing contact, just the mere non-affirming negation. That appears only to an inferential mental consciousness and is permanent. Like emptiness, it is a mere absence of a negated factor. For emptiness, inherent existence, and for space, obstructive contact. Okay, then forms arising from promises. When one takes a vow of individual liberation, a form arises in dependence on the shape of the body, as in crouching. What does that mean? Why mention crouching? Anyone know? Maybe no one's taken vows. So if Venerable Shanka was here, he would say, when you take the vows, you have to kneel down, you have to crouch while your palms are together and make this very strong vow. Maybe sometimes people say, why do you have to crouch? This feels so uncomfortable. I think sometimes the lamas say that leads to this very strong non-revelatory form being formed. You're thinking, I'm going to do this. So when one takes a vow of individual liberation, pratimoksha vows, a form arises in dependence on the shape of the body, as in crouching, and in dependence on the sounds of speech, such as declaring that one will turn away from killing. One is taking this vow at that time. The abbot asks you, you will not do this, and so forth. The subtle physical entity is said to arise at the moment of first taking the vow and remains with the person until losing the vow or death. So non-revelatory forms do not continue with us after death. They're lost at the time of death, but they, as long as that vow has not been renounced or broken, that non-revelatory form can be perceived by beings with clairvoyance, with their mental consciousness, because it's an object of mental consciousness. Similarly, a form arises from a non-restraint, as for instance, independence on a butcher's physical and verbal actions in killing animals and selling their flesh. So that was what was referred to before as the opposite of a vow. A middling variety of such a form that arises from physical or verbal virtue. Forms arising from promises are continuations of virtue or sin, and arise from revelatory actions of body or speech, or arise from cultivating meditative stabilizations. Since the motivations of these actions are not knowable by others, they are called non-revelatory forms. nampa rikche mayimpe suk. And then imaginary forms, kuntaki zuk, dream objects such as elephants, and non-actual objects of meditation, such as corpses filling the world, where we just talked about, appear as if they were actual forms, but are not. Thus, they are classed as imaginary forms. The Prasangika say that the dream consciousness is solely a mental consciousness appearing in the aspect of the 5 sense consciousnesses, right? A dream object is an external object affecting a mental consciousness, just as a reflection in a mirror is an external object affecting an eye consciousness. So for Prasangika, a dream object is an external object. That can blow your mind a little. If you think about it, yeah. A dream object is an external object affecting mental consciousness in the same way that a reflection in a mirror is an external object affecting an eye consciousness. The non-Buddhist, my PDF, what is that?
Mimamsaka.
Mimamsaka, yeah.
Mimamsakas say that the light of the eye hits the mirror, and through returning to the eye, an image is seen. The Buddhist Vaibhashikas say that a clear type of form arises in the mirror. The Sautrantikas, Chittamatras, and Yogacaras Svatantrikas say that a mirror image is a false appearance to the mind and is not a different entity from the mind. Prasangika completely different than all of them. Prasangika, however, say that reflections, falling hairs seen by one with, what is it called? Can't remember the medical term. You know, when you have this eye defect of seeing, what are they called? Fallers? What are they called?
Floaters.
Floaters.
What are we saying?
Jeffrey incorrectly says cataracts here, because usually rub rip can mean in certain circumstances cataract, but usually refers to this eye disease, this fault of the eye in which you see floaters. The falling hair is seen by one with floaters, and mirages, Prasangika says, are visible forms just as echoes are sounds. A consciousness perceiving these is nevertheless mistaken because, for example, a mirror image of a face appears to be a face and not just a mirror image. And then finally, forms for one with meditative power. So this means forms that arise from meditative experience. Forms that appear to one who has attained mastery in meditation are objects of meditation that exist in fact. Mere earth or mere water as a meditative manifestation of one who has attained mastery in meditation is actual and not an imaginary form. So when we talk about our mindfulness of the breathing, mindfulness of the respiration, I've mentioned several times Ellen Wallace was so intent in his early years on trying to develop tranquil abiding that I think he went to Sri Lanka or Burma, maybe one or someone in class remembers where he went, and he asked, how can it be that being mindful of the breathing can lead to single-pointed concentration, because the breathing is something that's moving, whereas the object of meditative stabilization, of samadhi, has to be stable. And he was told that the final object, by being mindful of the breathing, you're familiarizing yourself with which element?
Air.
Air.
Air
Yeah,
element, right?
wind, yeah.
And that remember, what's the definition of the air element? that which is light and moving, light meaning not heavy. And you develop a mental image of that through mindfulness on the breathing a long time. And then you transition at that point, once you've got a mental image of the air element, you use that as your meditative object. So I think that is in accordance here, forms for one with meditative power. So that would be, usually the air element is, the ordinary air element from Buddhist philosophy is considered to be a form, right? So this is this meditative object of someone meditating on the air element would be a form for one with meditative power. So Jeffrey's translating here, mere earth or mere water is meditative manifestation of one who has attained mastery in meditation is actual and not an imaginary form. Included in this category are objects of meditative manifestation that can be shown to another, can be shown to another being's eye consciousness, but this does not make the object as it appears to the master a visible form. For him, it is still a form for the mental consciousness. And then the reason I have it highlighted here, that's the end of this sort of citation about the 5 kinds of forms for mental consciousness. This is compared to the varieties of external existent objects seen by different types of beings, as in the case of a god's seeing a bowl of fluid as ambrosia and a hungry ghost seeing pus and blood in the same place. So this is different than that example that we've talked about before and we will talk about again in the future. Okay, so I thought that was worth having this, if you can save that PDF. Yeah, what do you think? Make sense?
Venerable George, can I ask
Yeah.
you a question?
Yeah, of course.
I'm just curious, that last one, included in this category are objects of meditative manifestation that can be shown to another being's eye consciousness.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, is that, for example, I know there are stories of people, giving, certainly in the Mahasiddha stories of people getting an empowerment from their guru, and they emanate an image of the mandala for the empowerment. Do you think that's what's being referred to here, or
It
something
might
else?
be. It might be because it said that for the person who is presenting this image to another's consciousness, it is a mental object, but it is presented to the eye consciousness of the participants. So I think that would fit, Paul. What do you think?
But that's yeah. I mean, that's the only thing that kind of immediately comes to my mind.
So when Marpa was what was it? Who was it? So Marpa's guru was Tilopa, right?
Tilopa or Naropa?
Or Naropa?
Forgetting.
Was it when I think it was? I'm trying to remember. So let's say it was Tilopa. Tilopa manifests as Hevajra and said to Marpa, who's the student at this time, he was in India. He said, "Who do you prostrate to, me or him?" So Marpa thought, so this must have been the emanation, like you say, that was emanated to the eye consciousness of Marpa. So Marpa said, "Oh, I see Tilopa all the time, if I'm right in remembering that it was Tilopa. But Hevajra," so he prostrated to Hevajra, and Hevajra immediately disappeared. And Marpa said, "Before the guru, the deity does not exist. Because of this mistake, you will be hindered in achieving enlightenment for 3 lifetimes or something like this." So I think you're right, Paul. I think that might be an example of that.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Yeah. So if you like to check, you have this PDF, but you can also check in the translations of the Abhidhamma Samuccaya. So, yeah, I'll leave that up to you. By the way, unfortunately for me, because I loved our discussion groups, I have an eye examination on Monday, exactly at 2 o'clock. So I won't be present at the discussion. I know there were only a few people at the last discussion, but if you'd like to come and discuss some of these things and try to clarify, maybe some of the older students can answer your questions. I'm sorry about that. It's 2 weeks in a row we've missed discussion, but okay. So finally, at the end there, it says, through this analysis, we should understand the status of many other similar factors. Okay. So let's just begin this next section. Now, how the dream analogy establishes all entities to be false. So this is, in the Tibetan text, it just says sumpani. So sumpa means third. So what were the previous two? If this is the third outline, what were the previous two? The first one was milam gi pe shepa rangshin gi yobam medrupa. You cannot prove. That was what we talked about. The second outline was milam gi pe sedu suchiro mepani druba. There's no external object as there are in dreams. You can't prove that. And now the third outlines is the example of the dream. All things are faulty things that you can prove. Okay, so this is the previous two outlines, which were actually just called 1 and 2, were things that you couldn't prove. The Chittamatra's assertions about dreams couldn't be used to prove what they wanted them to prove. But the dream analogy can prove or establish all entities to be false. Okay, so let's introduce this. Lama Tsongkhapa begins, having established the dreams have no reality, no intrinsic reality, on the grounds that what appear as the three factors in a dream, the object, sense organ, and consciousness, are all unreal. They are not only unreal in the sense of the Svatantrika, not truly existent, they're also not inherently existent. Chandrakirti, in order to demonstrate the unreality of all the other phenomena that have yet to be established as lacking true existence, states that even during the waking state, all phenomena are proven to lack intrinsic existence. So then, sort of in the Tibetan, in Lama Tsongkhapa's original text, they don't have the karikas. You're supposed to know the Madhyamaka Vatara karikas by heart. So he just sort of gives the interpretation, but all of the interpretations, even the Tibetan texts nowadays, have the Tibetan there. So this is referring to verse 652, the second through fourth lines, B through D. It says, and as in dreams, here too, in the waking state, phenomena are false and mind has no existence. There are no objects of experience and no senses either, or either, either, right? There are no objects of experience and no senses. That means there's no inherently existent objects of experience and no inherently existent senses either. So the Lama Tsongkhapa says, just as the three factors, the object, the sense faculty, and the consciousness are false in dreams. So this is the correct way of using the analogy. So the analogy for Prasangika is that there is no I consciousness that sees a herd of wild elephants in the dream, right? There's no sense organ, there's no eye sense organ that you might imagine in the dream. They're all falsities. In the same way, phenomena are false here also in the waking state. Therefore, the mind perceiving these phenomena has no intrinsic existence. The mind that's perceiving them is not inherently existent. Likewise, there are no objects of experience of the senses, such as form and so on, and no intrinsically arising senses either. So I'm going to go over this next time, but I just wanted to read this next section here. Thus, it is stated in the sutra, or in sutra, just as one perceives magically conjured animals, things, though appearing, do not exist in reality. So this is quoting sutra. They resemble illusions and are like dreams. This truth has been shown by the Tathagata. So in Chandrakirti's text, this is quoted, as is the next verse. It just says from sutra, but it doesn't say what sutra. So the next verse, it's kind of interesting. No one has found that verse up till now that I know of. Also, Jimpa has said something like that. Also, so this is another, looks like a different sutra. The beings of cyclic existence are dreamlike. There is no birth nor death for anyone, and no sentient being, no human or life can be found. All these phenomena are like foam or a banana tree, or you could say a reed in the swamp. So that particular text, that particular line is quoted in the Rikpe Gyatso, those of you who have the Ocean of Reasoning text that was translated, the nice big text, on page 124, where it's saying, that as a prelude, it says, one should understand that the point of these arguments is to refute the coming and going of all pronounced phenomena. So this is in the second chapter of Rikpe Gyatso, which is talking about the second chapter of fundamental wisdom, which is what? Analysis of what, Paul? Second chapter.
Coming and going.
Coming and going, right? The following quotations from the Samadhi Raja Sutra are provided to illustrate this. So he gives a couple of lines, and then he says, beings in cyclic existence are like dreams. They are unborn and undying. Sentient beings, humans, and life are not found. These phenomena are like foam, plantain trees, illusions, flashes of lightning, the moon in water, and mirages. No person has died in this world. No person passes or goes to any other world. So he's quoting that from the Samadhi Raja Sutra. So the second verse here, where it says just after the word also, that seems to be quoted in the Samadhi Raja, but it itself, the Samadhi Raja might be quoting again Hearer's sutra. Not clear. Okay, so that's what we're going to begin again next time. How are we doing? How are your minds? Invigorated? Deflated? Stephen or Richard, how are you feeling?
I think I understand what's going on. I think I understand the text. So I'm in pretty good shape.
Okay, good. KT?
Invigorated and need to go over it again.
Okay, yeah. John, what do you think?
Oh, I'm completely invigorated, but I lost track of what you were reading from at the end. Where I lost my place, I guess.
Right. So what I was saying was that this particular quote, although Jimpa doesn't mention it, it is quoted in the Rikpe Gyatso, The ocean of reasoning, which is one of Lama Tsongkhapa's three big
Yeah.
texts. It is the Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on Prasanapada, the clearly worded, or some of you
Yeah.
say the not so clearly worded, of Chandrakirti. So in the English translation, on page 124, this exact quote, the second stanza here that says the beings of cyclic existence are dreamlike, and so
I
forth.
just don't, that's where I'm lost. I must have lost my place. Where are the beings of cyclic existence?
So are you on, did you see the verse right before that? Just as one perceives
Oh, yeah. I actually did. I turned the page, didn't realize it. Sorry.
Right.
Got
Good.
it.
No problem. No problem. So that where Lama Tsongkhapa is quoting there, well, let's say he's quoting Chandrakirti because it appears in the Madhyamaka also, the Bhasham. So it appeared that Chandrakirti was quoting from that second verse is quoted from the Samadhi Raja Sutra. So that's a Mahayana Sutra. The first one may be from a Hinayana Sutra. Okay. Don, how are you feeling? You okay?
Yes, it's going okay. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Suvash?
Venerable George, I'm good. I just feel that I'm amazed at the amount of material that Lama Tsongkhapa can cover. This, and of course the depth too. So sometimes I recognize that, and I'm just amazed at his abilities.
Yeah. I felt the same way when I was studying with Geshe Sopa. Before we studied Gompa Rapsal, we studied Drangne Lekshe Ningpo, the excellent explanation of the definitive and interpretable sutras, that big text by Lama Tsongkhapa that the Dalai Lama considers to be his the most challenging text he always brings up. When Geshe Sopa was teaching that, to read Lama Tsongkhapa's exposition, especially about the Chittamatra, just like, wow, just amazing. Yeah, the breadth of knowledge and the research that he did in going into all of the different points developed also for me incredible faith in Lama Tsongkhapa. The same way that we talk about developing faith in the Buddhist teachings about karma and other things that are not so obvious, by having a realization, an understanding of emptiness that the Buddha taught, and thinking if the Buddha taught emptiness, which is so difficult to understand and so liberating, why would he have lied about these other things? So yeah, that's a very useful kind of understanding to have. Okay, so again, I will see you folks next Saturday. I won't be available on Monday, but the discussion group could go on if anyone has. There were a couple of people apparently that came to the last one, and you maybe you can discuss about these various forms and so forth, and and maybe read from the other translations of the Abhidhamma Samuccaya. Okay, before we end, any questions, doubts? Okay, keep your minds happy. Let's dedicate our virtues. So we've created, because of our motivation at the beginning, bodhicitta motivation, incredible merit, but also possibly some insights into emptiness. So created some perhaps collection of wisdom also. Due to these virtues, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception, or lead migrators without exception into that very same state, the state of enlightenment. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow due to these merits, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And then for our Reverend Guru Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Khepje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, refers to the Bodhisattvas, you Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, calling them out, victorious Losang Drakpa, meaning Lama Tsong Khapa, who is up in Tushita heaven now, father and sons, together with your lineage, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow here and now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make this request. You who are the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of both the victorious one's teachings, the Buddhist teachings, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace, you suddenly passed away, at which point I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta, of the bodhisattvas, who is calling on the power of truth, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And finally, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateway for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by love, all illuminating spiritual friends, I make this request, the implication being, please live long and stable lives. Okay. So thank you. Yeah, what happened to, I guess, some people disappeared. So Mintu suddenly showed up at the end. Mintu, good to have you here for the last section. Hope you have a chance to listen to the recording. Look forward to seeing you all next Saturday. There'll be no, I won't be present at the discussion on Monday, but please, the link will be open if you would like to come. See you next week.
Thank you, thank you,
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you.
So wonderful.
Anyway.
So
Venerable,
wonderful.
thank you,
Thank
Venerable
you.
George.
Oh man, so many thanks.